What do you get when 3 home health PTs and 1 business suit sit down to solve real-world clinician problems? Welcome to Home Health, Suit and Scrubs, the podcast where home health clinicians meet the business side of care. I'm Dan Haggerty, your resident suit, founder of Care in Motion and Chief Revenue Officer at In-Home Therapy. And I'm joined by the Scrubs, Brendan Kirby, Home Health PT, Lisa Thompson, Home Health PT and mind behind Home Health Chronicles, and Dan Catuccio, Home Health PT and social media personality for therapists everywhere. Before we dive in, don't forget to check out careinmotion.co, where you'll find our full podcast library, resources to help you thrive in the field, and a store full of clinician-approved products made specifically for home health pros like yourself. In this week's episode, we're flipping the script. Teresa Davis, a former home health speech therapist turned executive director of Hospice for Accent Care in Chicago, joins us to talk about what it's like moving from patient care to leading a team. She shares what surprised her most, what clinicians should know about leadership, and why she believes more therapists should make the leap. We've got Dan Haggerty here and Mr. Catuccio. How are you doing tonight?
Hey guys, very well. How are you?
Yes, fantastic. We have a special guest, someone that I have worked closely with. I've been looking forward to this podcast for quite some time because I had the pleasure to work with Teresa Davis, who has been both in the field as a home health speech therapist and also has transitioned into leadership. So welcome, Teresa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited. We're excited to have you here. So maybe kick things off with a quick introduction. Just tell us about yourself and your career in home health.
Sure, absolutely. Well, as you said, my name's Teresa Davis. I'm a licensed speech language pathologist. I've been practicing almost 30 years, done every setting, every population, every age group you can imagine. And now I'm currently the executive director of Hospice and Palliative Care Services for Accent Care.
That's great. And you are in Chicago, Illinois.
I am based out of Chicago, yes.
So you're where the Pope is from.
The Pope, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I follow this person, Annie Agar, I think her name is, and she posted something. She's like, I can't believe that Chicago birthed a Pope before a quarterback who can throw for more than 4,000 yards.
There you go. Sad but true.
So Dan's a PT, and as you know, Brendan's a PT. Normally we have Lisa from the Home Health Chronicles here with us, and she's a PT as well. So we've taken a little flack for not necessarily having other disciplines on. So thank you for representing speech.
My pleasure. Anytime I can tout my profession, I'm happy to do it. And May is Better Speech and Hearing Month, so you couldn't have picked a better time.
Yes. Good call. Yes, absolutely. So maybe tell us a little bit, and Dan, I know you'll pop in here, but maybe the differences, or just tell us in general, about life in home health as a speech therapist.
Yeah. So if you had talked to me 30 years ago when I was in college and told me I would work in home health, I would have run screaming from you, and there would have been no way. And it is absolutely my most favorite thing I have ever done, any setting I've ever worked in. To me, I think that there's no greater privilege than to be invited into somebody's home and to take care of them. And so when somebody trusts you enough to do that, you build relationships, in my opinion, that you really don't necessarily get in a hospital setting. Patients are super sick. They're usually medicated. They're at the beginning of that acute phase of their illness. And then you get them at home and it's, a whole different person who's so excited and grateful for you to be there. And you're learning about them personally and interacting with their families. So it's just been such a rewarding part of my profession. And I love it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And obviously working closely with PTs and OTs, like how do you work together, so that, for care coordination and just to be able to provide all of that to your patients?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of being successful in home health is communication. Obviously, you don't have the luxury of poking your head out of a room on a hospital floor and asking, for help or calling to find out what the person, did before. So really building relationships is the best part of it for me because you really need to know your teammates, you need to know the doctors, you need to know the nurses who are assisting so that you can provide the best possible care to your patient. So, it's being prepared before you go into into a setting and, shooting a quick email or giving a call to the rest of the team saying, this is what I'm working on this week. When are you going to be there? What are you working on? Anything that we can do together. And then the opposite end of that is knowing that maybe nobody's been there. Maybe you're the only visit that patient's going to have for the entire week, and taking that responsibility on too, because you wear all the hats then, right? You want to scan and make sure that there's no safety issues when you leave. You want to make sure there's no questions about medications before you walk out the door. Because for me, it's important so that I can go home and sleep well, knowing that when I close that door, that patient is safe and tucked in and has everything he or she needs before the next person comes. And that literally could be a week. I might be the only person, or at the end of a week and nobody's coming. So making sure that they have resources, no safety issues, they know how to call for help if they need it, and they're set up.
That's great. And maybe share a little bit about, just in terms of like your typical patient. Are you usually, is it more so swallowing? Is it Parkinson's? Is it speech?
I think in home health for speech therapists, it's primarily what I encountered was swallowing. Probably the biggest diagnosis was that dysphagia, and then cognitive is probably right behind it. So we have, your stroke patients, we have the patients who are Parkinson's with, advanced symptoms. We have head injury patients who are coming. So for me, my area of focus has always been dysphagia. It's been my special interest since I've been out of school. And so I get called in a lot. I'm not afraid of trachs and vents. I'm the person who always wants more when it comes to medical things. So I love a good post-trach patient. I love someone who's home with a passing mirror valve. I'm not afraid to get in there and work with those patients. So I seem to get that call a lot because there aren't a lot of therapists out there with that comfort level, especially in the home, because it can be a little scary when you don't have the respiratory therapist right there on the floor below you, or the ability to call the nurse right away. But I love it. And it's so rewarding to be able to give patients that security at home, knowing, hey, we got this and we can do it and we'll figure this out.
I've got a
Dan,
question.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just to build on that, my question. So, as you're well aware, so sometimes there can be like a little bit of cross or carryover between speech and OT when it comes to cognitive deficits, and kind of so because both can address cognitive deficits. I guess my question would be kind of what your best approach or a recommendation is for handling that, when it comes to, hey, who wants to do the cognitive screening, and what the advantages, I guess, would be to, one versus the other type of thing.
Yeah, so definitely collaboration, right? We're given so few resources and visits when it comes to Medicare and guidelines and things like that. So definitely making the most of everybody's availability and their talents, and just talking with, the team and saying, this is what I'm working on. What are you addressing in your goals of care? All right, you've got this piece, then I'm going to start focusing on this other piece, because we are given so little visits, and it seems to be that trend where more and more you're getting asked to do more with less. So the more we can kind of lean on each other and really work together, it just benefits the patient to have that team collaboration.
Great.
Dan, out of curiosity, like I worked closely with a speech therapist in our Florida market, and one of the things that he had said is he wanted the opportunity to meet with our PTs and OTs, and also to get on to different case conferences with some of the nurses as well, to sort of train everyone on when to refer to speech. Do you feel like your agency has done a good job of that, or is that something that you don't see a whole lot of speech? Or
We definitely do. I mean, the agency I work for is a large agency, and so I mean, the most common diagnosis I would say that I see someone like very commonly a speech therapist is stroke patients. Stroke patients who come home after rehab, and they have very pronounced aphasia or significant aphasia. They are having a hard time, verbalizing what it is that's on their mind. So oral motor plus cognition plus cognitive tasks. So putting the pieces together, I mean, we have speech therapists that follow our stroke patients regularly, and so what's kind of nice is, where I work, we have an outpatient setting that is neuro-based, like in my area. So many times our patients will be discharged with PT, OT, and speech all at the same facility. And it's really nice for continuity of care because we kind of can discharge them with a discharge summary so they know what's, type of situation they're getting. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, communication, like Teresa said, is just so key when it comes to, discharge planning and figuring out the best steps, best next steps.
Yeah, the other thing that I find too that I think speech therapists don't get utilized enough for in the home is, we can provide respiratory support exercises and strengthening that help support what physical therapists are doing, that help support these patients who are coming home so deconditioned. And when you don't have the ability to use breathing effectively, it affects so many things, right? Your endurance, it affects your ability to participate in activities. So these COPD patients, these Parkinson's patients, even if they don't necessarily have communication issues or swallowing, we can get on and do a home exercise program training just to kind of build those muscles up and help work on achieving those goals for endurance and strength just by respiratory therapy, respiratory support therapy.
So are we talking to, and this is actually, that's exactly one of the questions I was going to ask is tell me some of the obscure things that us PTs and OTs who work with speech all the time don't know that you can offer that I know that you can. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So are we talking like diaphragmatic type breathing or?
Yeah, that's the big one. When I worked with Dan, we were going around and marketing those kinds of things to agencies because people just don't think about it, right? We get in there and like, oh, speech therapists, they just kind of work on clarity of speech or, R's and S's and all those good things. And then they think about the swallowing and the cognition. But, those patients with those diagnoses that start to affect their core as, Parkinson's patients start to progress and they start to have difficulty maintaining their strength, or like I said, patients who have lung cancer or COPD, we can really work on those diaphragmatic breathing exercises to contribute to being able to tolerate exercise longer, right? And that helps to build up that independence and make them safer when they're in the home as well from a physical therapy standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, I mean, I'm so used to seeing speech ordered in, like I said, we have a patient after a stroke, they come home acutely from the hospital or acute rehab, they come home with the PT, OT speech. But I mean, I'm thinking about these MD referrals, right from the physician's office that, Parkinson's, which, as their speech can really be significantly challenged. So, I mean, it's just good to know that these are other options that speech can be ordered in. It doesn't have to be this acute thing that occurred. It can be a degenerative, type of condition where you can be of help and give them some strategies that we might not have thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps with also, it works with anxiety, it works with pain management. Those breathing exercises can be used in so many different ways. And it doesn't have to be a long course of treatment. It can be a couple of visits just to train and get an HEP implemented in there. But it really helps to complement the things that you guys do as physical therapists.
Awesome.
It's a good segue. I know Brendan, one of the things that he was interested in learning about a little bit was some of the challenges because, we created Care in Motion, and by the way, visit careinmotion.co. We created Care in Motion to be able to provide and sort of aggregate a lot of the different resources that people are having to find and pull together from different places for themselves, that might have been built for outpatient and not necessarily specifically for home health. So Brendan, I don't know if you've got any perspectives and questions, but I know some of the challenges were kind of where you were leaning.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, Teresa, we spoke like PT wise that, continuing education, a lot of it's tailored towards outpatient or hospital based, and like we feel like we're grasping at straws to pick and choose certain things to implement, or we're trying to give people direction and home exercises or things, but the pictures are for like other settings. It's just like, how do we adapt and how do we grow? I mean, some of these daily struggles that we face, I mean, PT wise, I think Dan and myself know, but I mean, from a speech therapy standpoint, we don't know what hardships you may face on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think lack of resources is probably the biggest one as far as materials, right? So I've created all my own things when I was treating, as far as home exercise programs and handouts and educational materials. So for me, that was the biggest challenge, is kind of keeping it fresh all of the time, because you're passing out the same thing over and over again. And so, obviously you're with different patients, and so it's new to them, but keeping it interesting and engaging for me as well, because it does get stale having to work from the same kind of bag of tricks all the time. So that was my biggest challenge, is finding ways to always keep things new and innovative, and kind of keeping my head in it as well, because like I said, the patients, it's new to them, but here I am handing out the same home exercise program for the 5,000th time this month, and it gets a little bit challenging to get excited about doing it, and that comes across in your patients, right? If you're not into it, or you don't have that buy-in, they feel that from you, and they deserve the best version of you, no matter if you've been there the first time or it's your third go around with them and you've seen them a million times. So that was always my biggest challenge, was the materials.
What about specific tests? I know from speaking from some other speech therapists, are they getting certain tests ordered for a speech therapist, or that you think are appropriate for a patient, and you want to, conduct them, but they cost a certain amount? Like, what can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, are you talking about the evaluation piece that I do, or like once I'm in the home getting like a swallow study ordered, or orders from the doctor
So
testing?
once you're in the home trying to get further testing, because you're like, hey, why wasn't this done? This should be done. Like, how does that work for you?
That is another huge challenge, because obviously patients are getting home therapy because they're homebound, right? And so a lot of times we miss the boat once a patient's home and we see that there's the need for a swallow study. How do I get that patient back to the hospital, get that test done? So for me, um, as much education as we can do as advocates for our profession, to get out there and be saying, hey, before a patient goes home, have we thought about X, Y, and Z? That was always a big piece for me. So, getting involved with the local hospitals that feed the agencies that you work with, and, seeing what they do as their discharge planning process, networking, getting involved in events where you can network with, local social workers and doctors, and groups where you have professional associations that you can kind of chat with them. But yeah, that's a tough one, and it just comes from relationship building. I just stumbled across the fact that there were mobile video swallow trucks that came out to patients' homes. I'd been practicing for 20 years. I'd never heard of that before. And another nurse that I had run across had mentioned it to me while we were in the home, saying, oh, well, why don't we order the truck to come out? And I was like, there's a truck? This is amazing. So, it's relationship building, it's getting to know the resources in your community, and it's just advocating, right? Advocating for the profession and the diagnosis. And a lot of times doctors don't know either, right? They don't know what we do. They have an idea, they specialize in their area, and it's not their job to know everything that I'm able to do, but it is my job to educate them and to advocate for myself. And then we just become better stewards of what we're trying to do for the patients.
One of the reasons that I think, most excited. No, it's great that we're able to, bring all the different disciplines, and we're even, we're going to be talking to a social worker next week, and
Oh, that's awesome.
yes, we had a nurse an LPN last week, but I was most excited because I've been able to kind of participate in your career journey, and it's really been exciting for me to see sort of that transition from treating clinician into the office, and so just so everybody knows, we Teresa and I'd worked together, and she came in for our company into a business development role, probably 3 years ago now,
Mhm.
and then was brought in to run the back office, and was working with all the schedulers and account coordinators, and then just under a year ago stepped in to take the role to run the hospice for Accent Care in Chicago, which is a big role. So can you walk us through kind of that journey? I think it's exciting.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I've been really blessed to work with a lot of great people. I think for me, the best thing anybody can do for me is to tell me that I can't do something, and that makes me want to do it even more. So when I was a speech therapist working in the hospital, I just wanted to learn. I seized every opportunity that I could from the time I was a baby speech therapist. My first year out, I wouldn't ever do my reports in the speech office. I'd like camp out on a nursing unit and I'd observe and I'd listen and I'd start to get to know people. And, from there I weaseled my way into rounds, and from there I got to know doctors, and, was just constantly on this journey to learn. And, a management position opened, a rehab manager position opened at that time, and they said, well, speech therapists could never do that. There's no way that you can, lead physical therapists. They're never going to listen to you. You don't know anything about what they do. And I thought, well, I really don't have to know what they do. I just have to be able to support them and lead them, right? So, told me I couldn't do it, and I interviewed and got the job. And just again, every opportunity someone presented where I could learn or go to a workshop or a leadership development course, I took it. And then, took a little break and had a family, and decided I was never, I was happy being a PRN speech therapist, so I could be a mom, and that's where home health kind of came in. And then was doing that, and Dan walked in and saw a post for a business development position with him and thought, oh, well, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I might want to do that. And again, somebody said to me, well, you don't have any sales or marketing experience. You could never do that. And it's all I needed to hear. And I interviewed with Dan and got that job, and, you know, found that there was more to be done at the company. And just, I get excited by being a lifelong learner, and just being the best version of myself. And my goal is to always be better than I was the day before. So took that opportunity and learned. And um, Dan was so supportive. I mean, I always joke and say that you got me into this mess, but you were always the person to say, take a chance. Like I'm your get out of jail free card. So, use your instincts and trust yourself. And, I'll clean up the mess at the end. And, we did. And grew into an operations role and loved that every single minute of it. And um, the hospice role came up, and I thought, wow, speech therapists don't really do hospice. Somebody's going to tell me I can't do this. And sure enough, like that was, well, what are you going to do here? You've never done, we don't need a speech therapist. I'm like, yeah, but you need an executive director, and I can do this. So took a leap of faith and went through about 6 rounds of interviews. And after every interview, I would come home and tell my husband, oh, I think this one's over. It was fun, but, and then got the offer, and it's just, I haven't looked back. It's been an amazing opportunity.
So the key seems to be someone tells you can't do something, and that's when you like double down and you're
Double
like, oh,
down.
let
You
me
gotta
just show
believe
you.
believe in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Don't let anybody tell you can't do something, and never pigeonhole yourself into one thing. Like I said, if I had told myself like I did, 30 years ago, I would never do home health. Like every journey is an opportunity to learn, and you just don't ever want to put yourself in a position where you can't go back and say, oh, if I had only done this, I could have, and so that got me where I am.
So,
Yeah.
Teresa, you were in a very unique position, right? You were a therapist at one standpoint, and then you were on like the management end on the other. Like,
Yeah.
if you were to talk to like each group, right? If you were to speak from the therapist from a management standpoint, or to the manager from the therapist standpoint, like you have that unique understanding, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the one thing that you would want them to understand? Like, what's that one thing that's
Yeah.
that can help them grow and be better? I mean, because like Dan said, we're trying to bring on all these guests and everything else, but sometimes there is disconnect, and we all know that if there's miscommunication in home health, it can lead to problems. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I think from a manager to a therapist, I would tell therapists like it's not just about your piece of the pie, right? Like you can't just go into things thinking, well, I'm only the speech therapist, so I'm only going to work on this little section, right? You have to always think about treating the whole patient. And for me, like that's a customer service piece. So if I could instill one thing into therapists, it's you're going in there and you have to think about customer service, right? That's the first thing I think about when I go into a home is I'm thinking about, surveys and star ratings and how can I like really get these patients to love therapy and be engaged. And so, I'm setting expectations with them and I'm asking them what they want out of things. And so you have to break out of your therapist mindset and to really get to know people and connect with them, because that's how you're going to make progress, right? People are going to trust you when you can break through that wall and build a relationship with them. And then that leads to other things, right? They start telling people about how great, ABC therapy is, and you need to, refer your dad here. And I had such a great experience. So that's what I would tell therapists is to just always think outside of who you are as a clinician and how you can treat the whole person when you're in there. The other thing, from if I therapists to managers, it's just, it's again, it's relationship building. It's listening to the people that work with you and for you, because they have a lot to say that's important. And you have to be a servant leader. You have to be able to be willing to get in the weeds with people. I would never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. Um, I don't think you can manage from behind a desk, and I'm never in my office. Like, I want to be out in the field, and I want to be helping people grow and develop and love what they do. And that's how I can advocate for my profession and to help. The best thing that I can do is at the end of the day, people say, you know what, I was part of something really good today. I want to come back and do it again. And that's, for me, what I think managers miss. Like, if you're sitting in your office, you're missing it. You're not getting it. You have to build relationships.
Yeah, I think so many of the words that you've said, I mean, to me, just in having you on for 25 minutes, it resonates loud and clear why you're in the position that you are. I mean, the things that you said, I mean, you're a lifelong learner, mindset of, listen, I can do this. It's not all about my exact degree. And I love it because I'm an entrepreneur, and I listen to all these podcasts about mindset, and man, it's like 90% of the thing. So I just love that, you kind of took it by the horns and did what you thought you were capable of. So congrats to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about surrounding yourself with good people. You recognize the people that are there to support you and can help you grow, and then just believing in yourself and just, having a goal. And I always wanted to help people and make their lives better in some way, and just wanted to take it as far as I could. And if I wasn't happy, then it was time to do something else. That's the other thing, right? Life is too short to be stuck in something that you're miserable doing, and you work so much of your life that you have to love it.
Mm.
Otherwise, you've spent a lot of time for nothing. So if once you come to the end of something and it's not worth it anymore, and it's hard to get out of bed every morning, it's time to look for something different.
I love that. We at our company, we just got a new CEO, and one of the things that he's been saying is, I want everyone to be happy and enjoy what you're doing. And it takes me back, and it reminds me that I've got to go back to the way I used to be in terms of, I remember the first time I took over a fairly large role, I gathered the whole, team and said, my goal is to make your Sunday nights like more pleasurable, because like probably ever since you were a kid, like, when you're a kid, it's like Sunday night, you're like, oh, I gotta go to school in the morning. And then, when you go to college, you're like, oh, I can't drink tonight. And then when you get your, then when you get into the real world, you're like, oh, my weekend's over. It's like, so when you have that feeling of dread on Sunday night, it probably means that you're not working in a place where you're really truly happy. And it's like, you've got to find that somehow. So it's like, my goal is to like make Sunday nights more enjoyable again somehow.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, people want to be part of something great, right? And if you give them the tools and you make them feel valued, they're going to rise to greatness, right? They want to be part of something that makes them want to leave the house on Monday morning. And I tell everybody, it's not perfect. You're not going to love being here every single day. But if you go home every day and are proud of what you did and you want to come back, that's what I want. Let's do it again every day.
So when you're
To
thinking
our
about
audience,
go ahead, Dan.
I just want to say to our audience, go back and watch this one again, man. Like because there's so much good information in here. I'm going to watch it again. I think is what's kind of exciting to me is, a lot of our audience is clinicians, and as clinicians, there's sometimes we get to this point where like, okay, where can I go from here? Like what's ahead for me? Do I want to be a manager? And I just think it's nice for people to hear kind of an inspiring story like this, that there are other unique job responsibilities that we are potentially capable of. But the keys that you talked about is just learning, and making yourself capable for these positions. But it's nice to know that I think it's good to hear your story, to kind of inspire others.
I don't know, Dan, we might need to have her back to go a little bit deeper of how she made that transition. You know what I mean? Like, if she didn't just say, "Hey, I'm going to go do this the next day," like what inspired you? What had I think we're going to need to go into a deeper dive to kind of really understand what pushes us
Anytime.
over the next ledge. To take that next rung to keep moving forward. So
I would like to do that because just talking to you, Teresa, it just reminds, we used to get to talk every single
I
day,
know.
multiple times a day. And I'm like, now I know what I'm missing. Oh.
Well, there's probably some things you're not missing too. But there weren't all, but I'm not always sunshine and roses, but I appreciate I do miss our conversations.
So as we wrap up at least part one, so we've all agreed there's going to be a part two. So as we wrap up part one, as we near that 30-minute mark, what's maybe one or two different suggestions you would have? Like Dan said, most of the audience is treating clinicians. So what's maybe one or two suggestions you have for them as they're contemplating, making that jump into management or leadership or administration?
Yeah, like I said, for me, the key is relationship building. It's surrounding yourself with people that can bring the best out of you. Not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid of falling down, because we all do it. I think the goal and what tells most about you is how you pick yourself back up and move on. So that's how we learn, is by making mistakes. And just, always never settling for somebody telling you that you can't do something. If you have passion and you're driven, it's easy. You just put in the work and you'll get there. But there's always, healthcare is an amazing field because there are so many options for people to do things that they didn't think they could do, and the resources are there. And if you put in the work, anybody can achieve. Anybody can be where I am in my seat.
if there's
I
a
love
will,
that.
there's a way. That's
Absolutely.
what Teresa's saying.
There you go. There you go.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know on
pleasure.
behalf of Care Motion and Lisa can't be here. I know she's going to really wish that you'll be able to meet her next time.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you all so much. This was so much fun, and I look forward to coming back. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
And to everybody listening, make sure to check us out. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to get your podcast from. Check out careandmotion.co, not com, careandmotion.co. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And definitely be sure to check out Dan Catuccio and the Home Health Chronicles as well. So it's been a pleasure, Teresa, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care.